If you want to be the best at something, you have to learn what it takes to be perfect. We're never going to achieve perfection, but the more that you're chasing perfection, the more you're going to get closer to it. And the closer you can get to it, the higher the likelihood is of success. The people that turn into being the greatest in their sport are always thinking positively, or always finding an outcome to find a positive outlet afterwards moving forward.
The Stevens Financial Security Award program that was recently announced by the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. What impact do you think that'll have on athletes?
I think it's going to have a really positive impact. When I first read about it, the first thing that I said was, wow, this is amazing. I now have at least some form of financial security, both for myself in the future, as well as for my family. That's the safety net that I want to know that I'm working for on a daily basis still to this day.
Today on True Alternatives, we're joined by one of the greatest U.S. Olympic athletes of all time. Vincent Hancock is a 4-time Olympic gold medalist skeet shooter. On today's episode, Vincent shares the grit, discipline, and mental mastery that shaped his journey to excellence. We dive deep into how he visualizes success, trains under intense distraction, and handles pressure. Plus, we explore the financial realities most Olympians face and why a new program might finally change the game. Welcome to True Alternatives, a Stone Ridge series exploring unique and highly valuable perspectives on today's most challenging topics. I'm your host, Marc Feuerstein. As a reminder, all investing involves risk. Principal loss is possible. This podcast is not investment advice, and the opinions expressed here do not represent a formal or official view of Stone Ridge. Vincent Hancock, welcome to True Alternatives.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited about this.
I'm really excited, and I appreciate the opportunity so much. As I mentioned earlier, I've never talked to or been anywhere close to a gold medalist. So being among someone with 4 Olympic gold medals is quite an amazing opportunity. I kind of wanted to start with, last year was my first experience with skeet shooting. And I'm 44 years old, so it took me 43 years to actually get my first experience. But I'd love to kind of help the audience understand what the sport of skeet shooting is and how the competitions work.
So skeet shooting in particular is a discipline. It's a high house and a low house, and one machine in each of the houses. The targets cross over a central point, and then we shoot those targets a total of 25 per round from 8 different shooting positions. So we're shooting targets that are going away from us, coming at us, as well as crossing right and left. There are a number of clay target shooting disciplines, like sporting clays, which is kind of like golf with a shotgun. Mm-hmm. There's trap, which is another Olympic game. The targets are only going away from you. And then obviously there's skeet. So there's a lot to do with a shotgun and lots of different things that you can try out.
Yeah. How did you even first get into or get your hands on a shotgun? And how did you first kind of get into the sport itself?
My dad was a competitive shooter, basically since the time that I can remember. And my mom's got pictures of me in a baby stroller back behind the firing line as my dad's competing at the Southern Grand American and different large trap shoots. And then he kind of stopped competing, but he took more of a coaching role with our local 4-H group. Yep. And so that's really what I remember of my first instances of going out and being around the shooting sports was going out into a field where some 4-H kids were hand throwing targets and shooting the targets, and he was helping with that. But it really was a family thing that my dad got me into, and I just kind of fell in love with it.
And so I have to kind of understand, a former athlete myself, like I have to understand the process of going from being kind of good to great. Like, at what age did you really start falling in love, and what did that falling in love look like? Like, how did it become such a passion that you became a master at the sport?
So I started at 10 years old. That's when my dad kind of really got me introduced to shooting my first true round of skeet. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it's slowly but surely picked up over the course of the next year. And by the time I was 11 years old, I was out competing at every event that I could possibly get to. And starting at about 12 years old, just before my 12th birthday, is when I found out that shooting was an Olympic discipline. And watching the torch run through my hometown in 1996, I was already an Olympic fan.
Wow.
By far, I was a huge Olympic fan. I mean, I loved baseball, played baseball since I was 3, was convinced at that point in time I was going to be a Major League Baseball player, but
Yeah.
obviously that didn't come to fruition. But I found that I had a passion at, let's just call it my 12th birthday, for shooting and shooting the Olympic discipline specifically. So that's when I started my path of, okay, I not only want to go to the Olympics, I want to win a gold medal. I told my parents that on day 2
Wow.
of ever shooting the Olympic discipline. And so a few months after that, my dad was in construction. He was a home builder. So he built a shooting range in our backyard. It took us a couple months to build it. And I started practicing in our backyard.
So you come home from school and you practice.
Yes, it was the day of a day of my life starting at about 13 years old looked like I would get up in the morning, and before I went to school, I would do 100 practice mounts. So it would take me about 45 minutes
Oh
to an
my
hour.
gosh.
And then I would go to school. I would get picked up. I would go straight to the range or back home and start shooting. That would last for several hours. And then I would come back in, eat dinner, do all my homework when my parents could convince me to do my homework first, that is. And then I would do more practice mounts.
I think we were speaking earlier, we both have children in the kind of, 14, 15 age range. Your childhood certainly feels a little bit different than the normal 14 or 15-year-old. Did it ever feel different than your buddies,
And I had to give up a lot in going into this and deciding this is what I wanted to do, because I was basically the only person in my entire school that wanted to shoot. And if you think about it, okay, it's kind of a strange sport. We're shooting clay objects that are flying through the air. Not a lot of people even know that that's a thing. So I've, at least not then. It's growing. It's grown a huge amount since when I first got started. But it's still kind of just a strange thing that somebody could be so invested in.
Yeah.
But slowly but surely, I actually got a decent number of my friends involved in the shooting sports, and we started a team. So we had a high school team that we were traveling around the country competing in competitions. So that was a lot of fun. But I did have to give up, my baseball dreams and playing any sport that my parents would let me play, because I just didn't have the time. Thankfully, my school allowed me the opportunity to miss a lot of classes, because I think it was my freshman or sophomore year, that I missed like 60 days of school. So that was difficult in and of itself, because not only was I going out and trying to compete at a high level, I was also having to keep up with my grades and keep up with doing all my schoolwork, which that was not an easy thing for me to do. So I was living it, breathing it.
It's amazing.
I was even dreaming about it constantly. So it was a every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week thing. And when I was about 14 to 15, we started introducing more of the visualization and relaxation pieces into it. So that, again, filled the rest of my time.
Can you kind of double click into that? Like what were some of those visualization practices, and then how it's evolved over time? Like, I'd be curious of just to hear your kind of process away from, the shotgun, right? So just what goes on the mental side, and how you think about it that way.
Yeah, the visualization piece of it was and still is very, very important. The biggest key to the visualization process, again, is the perfection piece. You want to visualize everything being as perfect as you possibly can, because it helps to kind of take away those negative or intrusive thoughts. I'll kind of run you through the process and explain it as we're going. Is when I was younger, I would lay on the floor and I would go through a relaxation process first, basically starting at the tips of my toes or the top of my head and relaxing my entire body. Sometimes it took 5 minutes. Sometimes it took 30 or 40 minutes to get my body to actually relax. And once I was finally in that mode and that zone area, if you will, I would then start the visualization process. And basically what I would visualize is shooting one perfect round of skeet, 25 targets, in about, half speed, maybe even less than half speed, maybe closer to like, a quarter speed. So everything is in super slow motion. And I would visualize a perfect mount and visualize a perfectly smooth target flying across and I would see kind of the shadow of the barrel, which you have to have an understanding of, okay, where is the barrel of the gun pointing? So that way you're actually pointing it in the right direction to be able to hit the target. And so making sure that all of those pieces are lining up absolutely perfect every time, it's not an easy thing to do. I can't tell you how many times I would have to just start over. I would be visualizing a single target, and then all of a sudden an intrusive thought would come in, and then the target would just go crazy, or I would lose sight of it at all in my mind's eye. So I'd have to start over and just run it through. So I would oftentimes, and it was anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half that it would take me to just visualize one perfect round. But that kind of set the stage for me to understand, okay, this is what perfect looks like. This is what I'm going for every single time. And then I had to take it a step further as I started getting a little bit older and started getting good enough to where I had the chance to actually win these tournaments. I had to visualize myself up on the podium and being in first place, because what I found was about the first 6 to 8 months of me shooting the scores in practice and then them not relating over into competition was that I was holding all of these people that I had grown up, looking up to.
Yep.
I was visualizing them ahead of me. I was seeing them as better than I was. And in all reality, they weren't. I just wasn't allowing myself the opportunity to think that I could beat them.
Yeah.
And as soon as I overcame that hurdle, which was really in 2004, that's when I went on, my first really big run of winning competitions. And domestically, I won everything in 2004, and then internationally in 2005. I think I got 7 medals in 7 international competitions and 4 gold and 3 silver. So I made a pretty good run on it that time. But a lot of it had to do with seeing myself as worthy of being able to go out and win, and then seeing myself as being perfect on every single move.
Where does kind of the world kind of championship, rank relative to Olympics?
So the World Cups, and obviously nothing is as prestigious as the Olympic Games because it's the Olympics. But as far as difficulties of winning, the World Cups are more difficult because there's more people.
Wow.
And then the World Championships is kind of like our pinnacle. There's nothing harder than winning a World Championship because, again, you've got so many people that are there. Instead of competing against a smaller field at the Olympics, you have a huge field. So we'll have 100 plus countries with 3 people from each country competing. And you've got the best of the best there. It always seems like at the Olympic Games, you have your obvious best of the best, but at the World Championships, you're competing against those people that just have the best days of their lives. And the numbers that's kind of the thing, right? Numbers never lie. So the more numbers you have, the more statistically speaking, you are likely to have higher scores. So it's never an easy thing to win a World Championships. I've tried many, many times, and thankfully I've gotten 4, but it hasn't been easy.
What I kind of found fascinating of skeet, baseball, if you're hitting 300, you're an all-star, you're going to the Hall of Fame. You miss one shot and, it could be devastating. Perfection is clearly pretty critical in everything you do. What happens in your head as you've already visualized all this? What happens in your head when you miss a shot? How do you deal with failure?
Well, I think that's one of the biggest things. And actually, it was just sent something a few days ago that kind of outlined this, that they did a research project on talking about tennis players. And they said that basically the difference between the top 5 athletes and the top 25 athletes is the thoughts. The people that turn into being the greatest in their sport are always thinking positively, or always finding an outcome to find a positive outlet afterwards moving forward. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what most people struggle with, is that as soon as they miss a target, they go into a fear mode of, oh no, I missed, or oh no, I struck out, or whatever it may be, with whatever sport. That's not the end. The big thing is that there's always a path forward. But what you have to do, and what I've learned a lot from coaching, is there's 3 questions you have to ask yourself, whether it's a hit or it's a miss. It's what happened, why did it happen, and how do I fix it? Because oftentimes I'll break targets, but I didn't make a good move. So I'll tell myself, okay, you got away with that one. So what happened? Okay, I explain that to myself. Why did it happen? Okay, I explain that to myself. Okay, well, now how do you fix it? You tell yourself to fix. So you're always ending every type of retroactive thought with a forward thinking positive thought. So that's really what you have to do is if you miss a target, it's not the end of the world. Yes, it could be the end of that opportunity to win a medal potentially, but at the same time, you never know. Until the last shot's fired, you never know what the score is going to be to get into the final.
Did you learn this? Like, did someone have to, did a coach teach you this? How did the mental part come in?
So the mental part of it, I worked with a guy named Bob Palmer. He was a sports psych guy out of Canada. At that point in time, he hadn't really worked with many shooting athletes, at least not to my knowledge, but he worked with a number of karate professionals, and I worked with a few other Olympians too. But he came down to Georgia. I'm trying to remember what year that was, probably like 2003. So I would have been 14 years old. And he kind of went through everything and said, hey, look, this is how you need to think. And so I started using a lot of his methodologies. And some of them were a little bit quirky, a little bit crazy, and some of them worked and some of them didn't work. But I kind of just went through those things and found out, okay, this works for me, this doesn't. This is how I need to think about this. This isn't how I need to not think about things. For me, It was very difficult as a child to listen to things. I needed to see it, see it, do it, and then teach it. So those are the big three things for me. And going through and on the physical side, I was still struggling because I didn't have a coach there. My dad was my coach, but he had never shot the Olympic style of skeet before. So we were just throwing things at a wall and seeing what would stick. And then I would watch, at the time, the guy that had won the 96 Olympic gold medal, his name was Ennio Falco. And in my mind, in the early 2000s, he was still the best skeet athlete that I'd ever seen. And so I was studying his methodology and I was like, okay, well, I like what he's doing. I need to try to do it myself. And I didn't do it even close to being correctly to what he was doing, but I was trying to, which funny enough worked into creating my own methodology. And so as I've gotten older, I would actually say that I've got the mental game down faster than I got the mechanical game down. The physical side, the methodology that's used to make a perfect move to a target, that's traveling 65 miles an hour, that's traveling on all these different types of angles and is affected by the wind greatly. Mm-hmm. And as you think about, throwing a disc out for playing disc golf or something like that, and you get a little breath of wind, what happens? It catches the air and it moves. That's all we're doing is we're shooting a clay disc that's being thrown through the air. So being able to adjust to those targets within 1.5 seconds and pulling the trigger and breaking two targets in that second and a half, it's really hard. Yeah. So the physical side of things has been a constant goal of mine of, okay, how can I get better? So I've never stopped evolving into how I can be a better movement person of the gun with my body, with my hands, all those things. And that's really trickled down into my coaching style too, of you need to do these things on a perfect basis. So that's why I came up with, okay, what went wrong? Why did it happen? And how do I fix it? So those three questions I tell all my athletes, you need to be able to do this on your own and teaching yourself, because out on the range, you're your own coach.
Yeah. And I've heard you talk about having to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Can you kind of talk about what that means and kind of, in your everyday practice?
Yeah, so distraction training, it's one of the best things that we can do, and one of the most fun things that I've done too. I'll give you a for instance. Before the Olympic Games, me and a student of mine, Connor Prince, who ended up getting a silver medal at Paris too, we got as many friends and family as we could possibly get to come out. And their sole goal was do anything and everything that they possibly can to make us miss. Because who's going to know what to say to get under our skin than the people that are closest to us? Mm-hmm. My wife is the only person that can really make me miss, because she knows exactly what to say and exactly when to say it, because she's known me for the last 19 years and we've been married for the last 17. So nobody knows me better. Everybody else, I can focus through it, and it really makes you focus more. And that's why we do it. It's because at the Olympic Games, you've got thousands of people standing around, sitting in the stands watching you. And you've got all these different noises. You've got photographers, you've got videographers, you've got referees, you've got other athletes, all these things that are going on, as well as the pressure of being at the Olympic Games. There's no way to simulate that except for finding ways to make it hard on yourself, to create some adrenaline, because that's really what we're trying to figure out is, okay, adrenaline makes most people uncomfortable. because it kicks in a fight or flight mode. And you have to make that conscious choice. And what I've found is that it truly is a conscious choice. When that adrenaline hits, you have to choose to fight. You can't choose to be frightened. You can't choose to be scared, because that is going to just make you run away. That's going to make everything cascade into these negative, intrusive thoughts coming into play, and then taking away your opportunity to be the best that you can. So making that conscious effort of, hey, you know what? I'm a little uncomfortable right now, but that's a good thing. That means that I have this adrenaline going. That means that now I can harness this energy. I can use it to actually go into this flow state of being ultra focused. And that's when I perform my best.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just to put a bow on, this discussion, if one of your students, if it's Connor or one of your daughters, just asks you point blank, what does it take to be truly excellent, right? What does it take for to achieve human excellence? What is your response?
It's not a simple response, but I guess the simplest I can possibly make it is, if you want to be the best at something, you have to learn what it takes to be perfect. We're never going to achieve perfection, and not in the actual perfect state of things. Yes, you might shoot a perfect score, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you made 125 or X number of perfect moves. You are constantly going to have to make at least small corrections. But the more that you're chasing perfection, the more you're going to get closer to it. And the closer you can get to it, the higher the likelihood is of success.
Amazing. I want to pivot into now the kind of financial reality of Olympics, which is obviously why we're kind of talking, or how we got connected. I want to start with, I think most people think of the NBA players, the Olympics, and that's kind of what they think. They think people have achieved greatness and they kind of retire into this comfortable life. What is the reality for most, Olympians like yourself and your peers?
The reality is that unless we win Olympic medals, we're probably not going to be worth a whole lot after we're retired. But at the same time, that's not the reason why we're doing it either. We're doing it because we want that Olympic name. We want that title. We want that opportunity to go and represent our country and to compete against the best athletes in the world. I mean, there is no grander stage, no bigger stage than competing at the Olympics. I always tell a lot of the guys, like, okay, look, how many people watch, the NFL Super Bowl, right? 300 plus million people. And around the world, I don't know exactly what that number looks like. I just know it's a really big number here. But then looking at the Beijing Olympics, like 6 billion people watched the Olympics at that point in time. So there isn't anything bigger. But at the same time, we're not doing it to be on TV. We're not doing it for any of the grandeur. We're just doing it because we love the sport that we're competing in, and we want the opportunity to compete against the best. The reality is most of us are not going to be NBA stars. We're not going to be making the money that they do. Now, the swimmers and the track and field athletes, they're getting slowly but surely closer. But for the other hundreds of sports that are out there competing in the games, we don't have those opportunities. And again, that's not the reason we do it, but I would be remiss if I didn't say I wish that we got a little bit closer every year.
What I guess, have you seen any sort of trickle-down effect of when Olympians retire? Are we losing athletes to coaching in other countries? Like, is there kind of a trickle-down effect of this?
There is. You're losing a lot of your athletes prematurely. Because there's not an opportunity to make enough money to survive, to be able to have a family and to do all the things that's necessary. People are like, you know what? I chased this dream for 10 years through my teenage years and through college. And then right after that, reality has to hit. I don't have the funding to continue to do this. So I need to go get a real job. I need to go do the things that are necessary that I can provide for myself. I can provide for a family moving forward. And that's potentially when we're losing our athletes at their peak forms. We don't really hit our peak until we're in our late 20s or early 30s. Yeah. And it's more of a maturation process. Yes, a lot of the physical sports like swimming, like the track and field, those athletes do peak a little bit earlier. But at the same time, the mental capacity that we have with maturity as it grows creates this leg up that I mean, I can definitely speak from a personal perspective of I am such a much, much better athlete now than I was when I was 16, 18, 19 years old. Winning my first world championship, winning my first Olympic medal, there's no way I would ever go back to doing the same things that I was back then.
Yeah.
And so I wish that I knew the things then that I know now, as we all would say. But I wish that there was an opportunity for Olympic athletes, especially to continue on their sports, because I think that we can outperform ourselves. And I think that's really what would be fun to watch, is to see as people grow more confident in themselves, as they understand themselves better, what can they accomplish? That would just be really fun to see.
Yeah. I thought it might help to give our audience a quick overview of the Stevens Financial Security Award program that was recently announced by the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee and really anchored by our founder and CEO, Ross Stevens. The Stevens Financial Security Award program is going to begin with the Milan 2026 Games, and it'll award all Olympians and Paralympians $200,000 in financial benefits per games in which they compete. The award is really structured in two parts: $100,000 of income to live, available 20 years after the athlete's games or at age 45, whichever comes later. This grant will be distributed over 4 years to support any personal or professional pursuit, from family needs to entrepreneurial endeavors. And then the second part is $100,000 of death benefit to protect, a guaranteed benefit for the athlete's family or designated beneficiaries upon his or her death. The program also includes a very powerful multiplier effect. Athletes will receive $200,000 in benefits for each games in which they compete. So if you participate in 3 games, $600,000. This really encourages continued competition for U.S. athletes. I'm sure you're aware of it, but what impact do you think that'll have on athletes?
I think it's going to have a really positive impact. When I first read about it, the first thing that I said was, wow, this is amazing. This is something that a little bit selfishly I wish was around 20 years ago, because this was my 5th games competing in Paris. And I don't think I have 5 more left in me, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it's an opportunity that I think a lot of young athletes need, because it does give them a little bit of security. It does say, okay, even if I don't achieve greatness of winning an Olympic medal, I've still achieved the greatness of making the U.S. Olympic team. Yeah. It's the most difficult Olympic team to make. And we have the best athletes in the world competing in every sport. And so just being able to say that you're an Olympian is a feat in and of itself. So having that, this fun to be able to come back and having this opportunity to say, yes, I've made an Olympic team. I now have at least some form of financial security, both for myself in the future, as well as for my family. That there's no greater security network in my mind, in my heart, that I can know of knowing that my family's taken care of. That's the safety net that I want to know that I'm working for on a daily basis still to this day.
That's great. One final question, and again, thank you so much for this time. This has been enlightening. I actually feel, I was an athlete growing up, and I can see now, when I was, envisioning being in the end zone and hanging out with all the girls later, as clearly that was not the right path to human excellence. But one final question, and I know it's hard because I know you're not, 99 years old, and so we shouldn't be thinking about our legacy. But what do you kind of hope young athletes take away from your story?
That's something that I've tried to think of, and I've been asked that a number of times, and I still find that as a difficult thing to answer, because I'm still searching for what is my legacy going to be. For me, it's not about winning the medals. For me, I think that's a piece, but that's a record that in my mind is inevitable. It's going to be broken. And so what I really want to be known for is what I can do positively for other people. And so that's why through the coaching that I'm doing, through the different businesses that I've got going, I'm trying to find ways to have a bigger and better impact, particularly in the lives of the youth. I want to see my sport continue to grow, and I want people to understand why I chose it, because it's given me the opportunity to do what I love for my entire life, seemingly, and it's taken me around the world multiple times. I met my wife because of shooting. Both of my daughters shoot. And I've met so many friends and so many people from around the world that do this because it's fun. And also because it's the safest sport in the world. That's one of the biggest things. If I can just talk to everybody and say, yes, I know that you're handling a firearm, but
Yep.
we literally have fewer injuries every year than table tennis.
That's
so
unbelievable.
If I can get that around to everybody, that'll be a great one.
I'll put that as the title of the show. I lied because I have to ask this because I'm near certain I will never feel it. What is the feeling of actually winning a gold medal?
That's a rush of emotions. It really is. Because it's a culmination of everything you worked for your entire life. And the best feeling in the world is not winning a gold medal, at least as an athlete. And it wasn't for me. That was a dream come true. But the best one that I can tell you was walking in opening ceremonies with the rest of the team, representing your country, doing the thing that you love, and knowing that you are the person that's there getting to represent the United States of America to the world, and letting them know that I'm here, I'm competing, and I'm doing my best. That's the best feeling, because those athletes and the energy that they have when they're walking in and they say United States of America, I have yet to find anything that can get the adrenaline running quite like that.
That's awesome. Vincent Hancock, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.